Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As you know, it is our custom here that I love to welcome our audience because I personally want to thank them for a couple of things I know that is very expensive in my mind. That is time. Time is one of the most valuable commodity known to mankind. And many of us don't know the value of it and we misuse it. But all of us are given 24 hours. How we spent that 24 hours is all up to you. The other is the journey. The journey housed who they were and created them who they are today. And today they are coming. Andy is coming to share some of this insight with us so that we can become better human spirits. The goal is that we would grow from his wisdom and his insights. I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It is my honor. I want you to tell the folks, because Andy, I've been telling them for several years that they are creators. They are folks that came here and we have the ability to create what we want. It is how we perceive things. And once we learn how to utilize our thoughts, we can manifest whatever we need. So tell them those of the things that you have created in your life, because I tell them the journey comes so that you can serve, and it makes service of all of us. So what is your platform that you're using to serve others?
Well, you mentioned the word journey, and it has been a journey. And you know, part of where I am today is based upon what I've lived and experienced and how it's impacted and influenced me. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast. And one of the beauties of having a podcast is time is valuable, as you said, but people can multitask, or whether people are taking a jog or driving in the car or cleaning their house or shuttling their kids or doing whatever, they can, you know, maybe listen to the podcast and hopefully get something out of it. And the long story short is I'm a parent coach. I'm somebody who experienced some challenges in my parenting with a daughter who had anxiety and depression, didn't know where to turn. My wife and I really struggled. We invested in a parent coach and it really changed our outlook and trajectory. And so I decided to become a parent coach because I wanted to help others who are struggling, who feel like they don't have a voice, who don't feel like they have support, who feel like they're stigmatized. And, and it's been very gratifying because, it's been life-changing for some families that I've been fortunate enough to be able to help. And, gratifying for me to be able to learn and participate along the way. And the things that have happened over the past couple of years have made parenting that much harder. COVID really had an impact on our kids because everything's about connecting. If you don't have connections to others, and people substituted social media for connections, but that's not a true connection. Those are, those are a substitute for connectivity. And so there's just been a lot for parents to deal with, a lot for children to deal with. Just in the past couple days, there's this new platform that Meta has put out to compete with Twitter called Threads.
Yeah,
it's brand new.
Saw that. Came on today. Came up live.
It's another thing just to distract everybody from connecting and helping others, right? It's just and so I look at that warily, and so. But I got to become a parent coach because of my personal journey. I want people want to achieve personal, professional, and financial goals. And I thought the important part of most of my adult life was to provide for my family. And that meant having a good job and making money and providing for them so that they can, my kids could have a better life than I did. And I did that. I was an entrepreneur. I worked really hard. My wife took care of the kids for the most part. That was kind of our arrangement. But there was more. I realized that there was more to it. And, when my daughter started struggling, it became a calling, an awakening, so to speak. And so, um, you
I
know,
call that, Andy, I call that the day of visitation. I
yeah,
think I tell people that we come to this planet and we are given an opportunity to be housed within this body that keeps us legal on this planet. And while we're here on this planet, we tend to plug in, as you said, into the matrix, the programming. The program in tells us that we are born, we live, we go to church, we go to high school, we go from high school, hopefully college, we go to college, we find a nice job, find a nice woman or a man, we get married, we have 2.5 kids, we have the white picket fence, and we have the dogs and the cats and all that stuff, and the material aspects of gaining things, the boats, all the fancy cars and whatever. And then we see that those that have attained those and have more than that are committing suicide all over the place. And so something must be wrong with that picture, that someone has attained all the things that they tell us should be attained, and it's good to have those things. But then when we see the folks and we're looking deeper at their personality, we see some cracks, we see depression, we see all these other things, and the next thing you know, people are dying and so forth. No one told us how to manage those aspects of our lives. And so then all hell breaks loose. So one of our custom here,
yeah,
Andy, is to go back into our childhood. Talk to me
yeah,
about that. Invite us into that place where you were brought, was your first resting place, if you will. What was that like? Because it is the place by which you are formed. Your belief system comes from that first stop, if you will, and then it carries you through life. And then you have to deal with some of the
sure,
things that you believe. What was that like, Andy,
yeah,
when you were coming up as a young man?
sure. Happy to comment on that. If I may, though, I'd like to comment on something you just
Oh,
said.
please, please, please.
Yeah, you talked about how parents with the white picket fence and having a certain way of growing up and being,
Yeah.
um, in terms of a track that most people take or have taken
Hmm.
over the in past generations.
Yeah.
And where parents struggle quite a bit is they bring their preconceived notions about how they were brought up or what
Yeah.
things were like when they were kids with those expectations on their current kids, and they try to impart all that on their children,
Yeah.
and their children are viewing the world in a different way, and and there tends to be strife and there tends to be conflict when you're trying to get your kid to be the best athlete, to be the person who's going to go and get his uh, you know advanced degree somewhere. He's supposed to marry this type of person, or she's supposed to marry this type of guy, or
Yeah.
whatever. And kids don't get to make their own choices and experience their own things. And what most human beings want is a sense of control and a sense that they feel understood.
Yeah.
That's what allows them to be connected. And when a lot of the parents that I work with, I spend time looking at their childhood, just like you're asking me this question,
Yeah.
looking at past traumas, looking at how they relate to other people, family members, friends, and otherwise, looking at what has worked for them or not worked for them as parents, because that sets a baseline or an understanding for me about how
Hmm.
I can work with the parents to try and take that next step. So, if I didn't do that, it would just be a canned approach where I had some kind of
Yes.
formula that would work for everybody, and it doesn't.
Yeah. You're
So
not dealing
you
with the
have to kind
root.
of understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I'm fine.
my childhood was shaped, primarily, by a divorce that occurred between my parents when I was 12 years old. I grew up in the
Hmm.
Northeast, born in New York, where my parents grew up in Southern Connecticut, a nice, rural town, um, that had great access to New York City and other places, but it was a nice rural town. but my parents, started drifting apart, and they divorced when I was 12, and there was a lot of blame and shame between the parents because there was hard feelings. There was a lot of
Yeah.
war, a lot of, not wars, a lot of uh, battles over money, and
Hmm.
and I got stuck in between all that, and it was inappropriate and uncomfortable for a 12-year-old,
Yeah.
and that shaped me in a negative way, in that I didn't have the dad I could, I saw my dad, but I didn't have the dad that I could kind of lean into and say, I'm having trouble with this girl. What should I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to learn how to fix my car and change my oil, or do those kinds of things, or just anything relating, something relating to sport. Um, and so, you know, I, um, I lived with my mother when I was a teenager. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up getting a job far earlier than I would have normally gotten a job. And
Yeah.
I've always worked. I became far more independent, and I realized that I didn't want to be um, someone who was caught in the middle, and not have my own financial independence as an adult. So when I
Yeah.
got out of school, I went the corporate route, and then took control of my own financial destiny, basically based upon what happened to me as a kid.
Yeah.
Was in and was an owner of a company that ended up doing quite well, and so um, so I've always been um, empathetic and understanding of uh, children and parents who are going through tough times, including,
Yeah.
I work with a lot of co-parents, and
Hmm.
those are parents who are separated, or divorced, or just not living together because they
Yeah.
never got
Yeah.
married. Um, because uh, what tends to happen there is both sides try to manage the kids differently, and the kids
Different.
get
Yeah.
confused, and there's a lot of conflict, and there's a
Yeah.
way to work through that and work around that, um, that I help parents with.
Yeah. That's a difficult place to be, and the fact that it's really funny and that you got a chance to experience it at such a young age, the dichotomy between the two parents, and seeing the pull as to what it does to a child. So you are familiar. You can take that position as a child when you are doing a counseling type of thing. When the family, I guess the parents are battling or having their differences, you can take the position of that child as to how it's affecting that child, this conversation that is being displayed by these adults, if you will. So here you are, and you got a chance to experience that trauma. And I tell people trauma is a wonderful teacher. It is painful, but what we do with trauma as human beings, we'll take it and we will change it. We will morph it and becomes different. Why? Because so that we can manage it. If it gets too much, we kind of lose our mind and start going all kinds of crazy places. But if we learn how to manage it, we kind of make our lives to the best of our ability, quote unquote. But here you are as this young man. You went into your school, you got your degree, you are successful in your business. How were you, the individual, now that you're away from your mom and dad? You are a successful businessman. What was the conversation that you were having with you before all the other things showed up in your life?
Can you rephrase the question? I want to make sure I answer it correctly.
Yeah, what was happening in your mind, your belief systems? What was driving Andy when he was the entrepreneur? What were those things that were most important to you, if you will, at that time of your life that was the
Okay.
power that is moving you through on your daily
Yeah,
basis?
I will tell you that that time in my life, I feel fortunate in that I didn't fall off the deep end, and it motivated me to become more independent and more empathetic as a person, and I think I've carried that with me throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, and I actually reconciled with my dad um, as a young adult because I basically said, "Hey, I can hold this issue over my dad's head."
Yeah.
For the rest of my life, or I can realize he's my dad and he does have some virtues. And if I can harness those virtues, realizing that I'm a flawed individual, maybe my life will be better.
How old were
And
you, Andy, when you did that?
24, 25 years old, maybe.
Yeah, because that's a
And
powerful insight to have, though, to see
yeah,
that,
yeah,
to go make peace at 25 years old.
yeah, I don't know what inspired me to do it, but
Hmm.
my dad was an entrepreneur. He inspired me to be an entrepreneur. He and I took trips together because he was a traveler and enjoyed traveling.
Yeah,
He really enjoyed comedy from a young age. We went to comedy shows together. And when he passed away in 2015, I actually, in his honor, um, took a comedy class and learned how to do comedy on stage and have appeared on stage doing that. So it was a way to
sweet.
pay tribute to him, learn a new skill, and get out of my comfort zone a little bit. But to answer your question, you know, during those teenage years, I felt a lot of rejection.
Yeah,
A lot of what happens in your teenage years, you're looking for your parents to emulate good behavior that you can
yeah,
model. You're looking for acceptance. You're looking for guidance. You're looking for facilitation so you can manage, learn and grow. I didn't really
hmm,
have a lot of that. And so
yeah,
I felt a sense of rejection. Um, and a lot of what I did as a business person in my 20s was finding ways to gain, frankly, acceptance, not
yeah,
just
yeah,
and acceptance to me was, uh, frankly, having success in the business world, but also
hmm,
making connections with people and feeling connected in a way that I hadn't felt before. So,
yeah,
if it was just me trying to, you know, being the entrepreneur who just wanted to make the biggest buck and have the biggest impact in the world, it probably wouldn't
yeah,
have, that wasn't me. For me, it was about how do I develop a sense of connection at this point in my life and a sense of acceptance. And being an entrepreneur tended to happen to be part of, the vehicle.
yeah. It is powerful that you, because a lot of people don't take the time, Andy. That's why I'd asked the question that some people don't take the time to investigate themselves as to why am I doing this? What's pushing me? They just do it. And we tend to compensate for something. And usually, when I see people moving in a direction, as a manager and stuff like that, I used to like to have a talk with them to see the driving force behind that in some cases. And I like the fact that you were aware of the value of relationships as from such a young man, and that was the one that was one of your guiding posts, if you will, not just obtaining the material
Yeah.
aspect of the things, but the guiding
Yeah.
posts while achieving the material thing was building relationships. And from
Yeah.
those relationships that you were building, um, what were you learning about you, the man? What was it that you started to recognize and say, "Wow, that's nice. That's bad. That's nice. That's good." What were those
Yeah.
conversations where you were having,
Yeah.
Andy?
Well, you have such great insights. I feel I need to comment on things that you bring up in between. And that's, you know, you talked about, having insight to be able to value the relationship and reconcile with my dad and have a good
Yeah.
relationship with him for many decades before he passed in 2015. And that was great. as a result, it really troubles me and is hard for me to see parents struggling the way they do.
Yeah.
And a lot of the reason that they struggle is because they get into this mode where they're trying to control their kids, or they're trying to react to a circumstance, and they don't do a good job of communicating or planning or reacting to it.
Yeah.
And as a result, it makes things worse with their kids as opposed to better with their kids. And so one of the things I do is I look at what triggers people. What is it
Hmm.
that makes you act the way you do towards your kids? What is it that makes allows your kids to press your buttons, that
Yeah.
that make things happen that way? And when you can unpack that on a day by day basis and change kind of some of that way your brain reacts and thinks,
Hmm.
it makes all
Yeah.
the difference in the world. And so
Yeah.
I enjoy helping people in that way. And you asked the question about, you know, um, what was it about me that became good or valuable, when I
Yeah. They
became
just,
a
yeah.
businessman. And the way I can best answer that is something that I try and tell people is that, um, I felt let down, so I didn't want to let other people down.
Mm.
And so, you can look at me, for those who, have the opportunity to view this recording on video, but it's, I'm an average looking bald guy, and
Yeah.
I'm not I wasn't a born salesman. I wasn't the smartest guy out there. So I worked hard to earn people's trust.
Mm.
Do what you say what you do,
Yeah.
and outwork people. And that's what I did. And so,
Those are valuable stuff, though, Andy. A lot of
yeah,
people
yeah, yeah.
um,
And
don't
that's,
understand that.
yeah. And I did very well. I did very well doing that. And,
Yeah.
my fastball, um, is really developing people. I
Yeah.
had, I started out as somebody who was like a project manager / account manager, and ended up running an entire division of a company. So I had to
Yeah.
learn basically how to hire people, how to develop people, how to run a P&L, how to
Hmm.
operate, how to sell. I had to learn all those things. And I didn't go to school to do that, and I didn't have a lot of teachers to do it. I just kind of, you know, got out there and did it. And but the thing that, once I got some momentum in terms of selling, the
Yeah.
important thing was the people that I had were loyal to me, and I
Yeah.
was loyal to them. I stayed attuned to them. I helped develop them, so they felt like they had the opportunity to have an impact. They had the opportunity to make more money. They had an opportunity to grow within the organization and be heard. And
Hmm.
so, what did that translate to? Less turnover, higher performance,
Yeah.
better client retention, better client referrals. And that's what built the organization for me. So
Yeah. Leader. Yeah.
fast
That's what a
forward.
leader does, man. That's what a leader does. And all the stuff you're talking about is what leaders should be doing.
Yeah, um, I just thought it was the right thing to do. I
Yeah.
wasn't looking at myself as, I'm a leader and what should I do to be a leader. I was looking at,
Mhm.
what do I do in order to scale this business?
Yeah.
And I was in the service business, so it was like, it's about the people,
Yeah.
and based upon my history and my belief system and all the rest, it kind of led to that. And so it's something I'm particularly proud of.
Yeah.
And it led to the parent coaching very easily,
Hmm.
because it's all about getting the best out of people,
Yes.
with their
I
goals
agree.
and their journeys. And I got certified. I took two certifications that were over a year long. I only needed to do one. I did two because I wanted a balanced perspective. Two programs had
Yeah.
different offerings, and one is affiliated with the International Coaches Federation. So I had to take classwork. I had to test. I had to go through peer coaching. I had to be overseen with coaching on my own. I went through a pretty rigorous process in order to do it. And what I learned was just there's a little bit more facilitation to get the best out of people in terms of their strengths and understanding than there is in the business setting. But there's so
Yeah.
much that's similar, and so that's it translated pretty easily for me.
Yeah, I tell people that everything you do in life, everything you do in life has a purpose. You may not think so, but in the plan of your life, I tell everyone that there's a plan for us. We have the opportunity to partner with it by the decisions we make. And as we partner with it and realize we get to a space in our life where we're like, I need more, there must be more. That uneasiness there was placed there for a purpose because there is more. And the nudge is that uneasy feeling. And when we have that, we then begin to make decisions that will propel us towards the answers to find out what is this here? Why is it here? What is it I need to investigate? And I tell people until you begin to do that, your life will be circular because it's not that you don't, I said you're thinking about it. You've been thinking about it. And when you're thinking about something, your life is circular. But when you decide to do something, that's when momentum begins to take place. So you can think about it all your life. I've talked to people, I've been thinking of starting a business, I've been thinking of starting a business years and years of their life. And they're circular livers. But the minute they said, they begin to say, I'm going to start this business, you'll see them. It changes the mind, it changes the thought pattern, and you begin to act and move forward. So here
Yeah,
you are, you've gained
I'd
all
like to
this
add to
insight.
that.
Go ahead.
Can I add to that?
Yeah,
I think you're speaking the truth in that people, when they set their mind to something, it changes the circular pattern and they start moving forward and gaining momentum. But
yeah,
that's a big step. But that's
yeah.
not where people succeed or fail. Where
Mhm.
people succeed or fail is when they experience some adversity along the way and they don't have the patience or the grit
Yeah,
to manage through the adversity. And what people don't realize is they can go down that path and gain some momentum. They hit a speed bump in the road, or they run into a wall, and then what happens is you retrench a little bit, and you move back on the path a little bit, but you don't move back on the path all the way to where you started,
yeah.
because you've learned some things, and then you carve a different path.
Hmm.
And so as long as you're willing to see certain things through and have the patience and determination and grit to do it once you get started, you'll be far better off than most.
Yeah, I think Colonel Sanders at 68 or whatever, when he retired and he saw his check. I think it was he had visited somewhere about 3 or 4 thousand people or something like that to sell his chicken, and it was he changed. He began to rearrange his approach and all of those things. Those are the purpose of it, so that you can make the adjustment. And he eventually got someone that agreed with him, and look what it is today. So had
I
he
mean, there's
quit,
so many different examples of that.
oh yeah,
McDonald's,
McDonald, all of them.
Amazon,
Yeah,
Tesla, none of them just started and the first thing they
yeah.
put out there just worked.
Hmm. I mean, that's a process that one must go through and make the adjustment. You talked about a parent trying to imprint what was imprinted on them by their parents. And I put it this way when I'm talking to people, it's like a computer program. You have your computer, and every now and again, there are things happening on the outside that your computer needs an upgrade. And so the kids are the ones, as I'm saying, they have all the upgrades. They're getting the upgrades, and our old program is constantly every couple of months there's some new program on that old stuff. If that person is not able to make that adjustment, you'll have a problem. And so you have to, and I think I had to learn that. And you have 5 boys. I was a single dad. I had to learn how to give my children the space to become adults. I saw that one of the toughest lessons a parent will ever have to learn. And again, I had to learn this, and I remember the incident to this day. My son, something he came and he said that he and his girlfriend, they were pregnant, and I remember my heart went nuts because I know the difficult life that would bring. And the thought came to me to said, "You're about to learn compassionate detachment." I'm like, what do you mean by that? And because at the time I would meditate a lot, and as I learned to be compassionate for my child, I had to detach to allow him to become. It was one of the hardest lessons because I'm looking at it going, no, inside I'm saying, don't do that, do this. And I had to learn how to release that. And so when he came to me for advice, I would say to him, son, this is this, and I am a little ahead of you. I've learned this, I've learned that. And looking at your situation, these are the points of view that I'm seeing. And I would bring all these different points to him. And then I said to you, I pray that you would choose wisely because every decision has consequences. And so I would allow him to make the choice because I had to learn compassionate detachment. And when I did that, Andy, we became closer, if you will, where he trusted me more to have that conversation of the deep things that he needed to talk about. Tough
I think
lesson.
that's fabulous. There are a couple things you mentioned there. One is your kid had to be willing to come to you and seek advice or input.
Yeah.
Most parents don't have that trusting relate. Or many parents don't have that trusting relationship with their kid, where because the parent will direct the kid or the parent will judge the kid,
Yeah.
thinking that they're helping when they're not really helping. So the fact that your child actually came to you says a lot about your relationship in the first place. And the second thing is, by asking for that advice, it was an invitation for you to actually give some of that information to your
Yeah.
child,
Mm-hmm.
and then frankly allow your child to make his own decision and experience the benefits of the consequences of it.
Yeah, I think it's a hard lesson for a lot of patients because I mean for parents because they don't want to let go. They want to be in control of that, and each one of us came here to have our own individual journey. As a parent, I can carry my sons to a degree, and then I have to let them begin their journey. My opportunity to input into them the wisdom, the pain and
Mm-hmm.
agonies and all that stuff. I had to learn all of those things.
Yeah,
And
and I was the
yeah,
parent when I was younger. Because of my upbringing, I was kind of the get or done kind of guy.
yeah,
Because I'm a guy.
hmm
There's a little bit more of that in me in terms of competitiveness and getting it done. And women are competitive too, but I had a get or done kind of attitude, and 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 some of my kids struggled a little bit more and just weren't willing to pick up the pieces and figure it out, and but I needed to wait for them to come to me for help,
yeah,
and then I would ask them, what have you considered, or what do or what have you tried, or what do you think, rather than just giving them the information. And so it was a combination where if they invited me, I would certainly give them some suggestions and let them make their own decisions, but I'd also try and challenge them so that they wouldn't just the minute they hit a hurdle, they try and reach out to me to get the answers. They try and be self-sufficient.
yeah. Andy, talk to us about, bring us into the space as to what propelled you to the direction of becoming the parent coach. What was the incident in the family? Because something has to now direct you to this aspect of um, your
Yeah, yeah.
life, something that you have lived through, and because of your journey living through, you are now given this gift to become a servant to help others through. What
Yeah,
was the incidents
sure.
that propelled you in that direction?
Yeah. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but
Yeah.
I'll dig a little bit deeper for context. And that is, you know, my younger daughter, who's 23 now, when she was 13, started experiencing some severe anxiety and depression. And at first we figured it was just her, you know, growing and figuring things out. Eventually we realized that this was a real thing and she needed some more support.
Hmm.
So what did we do? As parents, we tried to do the things locally that we could. We got her a therapist. We engaged with a psychiatrist who could help medicate her a little bit
Yeah.
and help her anxiety and depression. We worked with the school system to try and support her. We hired a tutor, and it didn't really, it didn't help enough.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where my daughter started spiraling,
Hmm.
to the point where she wasn't going to school. She'd leave the house at all times of day or night. She was doing drugs. She got to a point where she was starting to be harmful to herself or potentially others, and we didn't know where to turn. Finally, we realized that there was an ecosystem where you can give the gift and send your kid away for a period of time for more advanced therapy. It's
Yeah.
called wilderness therapy or residential treatment. They're two different
Hmm.
types of programs. And we invested in that for our daughter, and she was away for 13 months. And it took her out of her stressors. She learned um, she learned more advanced therapy, or received the benefit of more advanced therapy. She matured. She finished high school, and when she came back 13 months later, had she learned how to cope and was a different young adult at that point. She was 18 by that time. So doesn't mean her anxiety and depression were never not a part of her. She still lives with that, but she is a functioning adult who lives with her boyfriend, who works now, but she still has anxious moments and
Yeah.
things that she needs to deal with. But at least she knows how to cope. But a lot of parents, when they struggle with their kids or their kids are going off the rails, they try and find things to fix their kids. But a lot of it has to do with the parenting.
Hmm. Yeah.
Kids are wired in a certain way, but the way a parent supports the kid without judgment, provides love, allows them to experience adversity and learn from failure, um, makes a big difference. And I wish what I knew now I knew 10 years ago, because but that's part of life, is learning. And so what happened when my daughter was given that gift and was sent to wilderness therapy? We didn't promote the fact that that was the case, but we didn't hide it either. We didn't hide behind it, even though it was kind of stigmatized. So when people asked us, those closest to us knew what was going on, but there were
Yeah.
others who asked us how our daughter was, or they heard about it or whatever, and the phone started ringing. People
Mm.
said, I'm struggling too as a parent. What did you do? Or how did you
Yeah.
figure this out? Or I know somebody who's struggling as a parent. Can you talk to them?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, when I would talk to people, I realized that they felt as lonely and stigmatized, without answers, having to
Yeah.
make important decisions as I did and my wife did. And so, um, and then, when our kids were away, so that represented kind of that there was a demand and a need for that kind of
Mhm.
service.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I invested in parent coaching. Our marriage was, frankly, was on the rocks a little bit because
Hmm.
of all the stress
Yeah.
that we were going through, and we needed a chance to grieve. We needed a chance to stop shaming and blaming each other, because we had different parenting styles and different ways
Yeah.
of different views of things. We needed to learn how to communicate to our daughter when she was away and when she came home in a better way, so she wouldn't revert to her old habits that we were
Hmm.
facilitating and enabling. And so the parent coaching changed our lives. And so I said, okay, there's demand and need here. and we've experienced the benefit of it.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of men out there who aren't willing to be vulnerable and aren't willing to engage. And so I'm a guy in a field that is predominantly, led by women,
Yeah.
very capable women, but I have a different perspective. And sometimes the woman, the mom will call me and basically say, "We need your help." And I'll say, "Is your partner or your husband willing to be engaged?" And they basically say, I'm not sure yet."
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, "Okay, I'm a guy. I can probably connect with him in a different way. Let's get him on the phone." And lo and behold, things make a difference. And when you have both parents aligned, it makes a huge, it makes that much more of a difference. I work with individual parents where the
Hmm.
other parent doesn't want to participate. It's better than nothing, but it's not as
Yeah.
good as when both parents are able to participate in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah. I was going to ask you a question, but that whole conversation you just led, because I wanted to know how were you and your wife in the midst of that, and you explained, because you cannot go through that without the tug and the blame, the shame, all the other aspects that one brings into their space, because they feel as if they are responsible, and all the other things that happen as a result. And so you explained it and answered it perfectly, because it is a tug
I lived it.
between the parent. Yeah, once you live it. And I interviewed a lot of people, and then I'm learning something as I see that because there was a need, someone had to go through, a family had to go through that with the parents' structure like yours, because there were lots of families that are fractured where the male is not part of it. But because family is male and female, they needed someone uh, to go through it from the man's side. And my
Hmm.
friend, you were picked. And because you went through it and you came out as a refined servant, you had the heart, you had the willingness, you learned principles of relationship from your business, from a child, all of those things came into play. And you and your wife were committed to the union, even more powerful. And you now, as this power uh, unit, can now carry that in this Christian realm. They call it the anointing. Now, that is in the Christian realm, they say anointing, it means power. And so when you and your wife are operating as a unit, the power, the anointing to change lives are
Yeah.
even more prominent, because you have experienced it. It is personal. You've been tested, and the words that you and your wife would release will be empowered with that anointing, if you will, that power to
Sure.
release men and women from
Yeah.
that dark place where they're at. So you were, I believe, in my heart of hearts, that because the need was there, and they had to have you, because, as you said, in that industry, there's lots of um, women, but the men are missing. But there is a man in there that
Hmm.
can help. And because you're there, your effectiveness will be received by men, because we are programmed to not to be emotional. And that is such a lie, because um, we are all of that. Man is an emotional being just like a woman. And so we are being lied to. And when we believe that lie, the man is damaged himself. He's not able to be whole. But you are able to be whole. And as a whole individual, speaking to a fractured individual, you will always bring light. So I believe you are there for, I remember growing up in the church, they said Esther was for a moment just like this. And I believe you were born for the same. We all came here
Yeah.
to be servants. So
I
welcome, man.
definitely feel like I have a purpose.
Yeah,
It's what gets me excited to meet with parents who are struggling, because I can see the
yeah,
difference very quickly.
yeah,
And just so you know, my wife and I are as connected as we've ever been. We just
yeah,
celebrated our 30th anniversary. It's some of the adversity that you go through that binds you together. It's not just the good times, it's the bad
yeah,
times. And and she and I are not always aligned in terms of our parenting and act as one unit.
yeah.
The important thing is that we speak in advance where possible,
Hmm.
and we for things that are important for our kids. And
Yeah.
then what we do is we compromise and get on the same page. And sometimes we are in full agreement, and then we decide how it's going to be communicated and who's going to communicate it.
Hmm.
Or or you know, one person feels really strongly about it and the other one decides, okay, if this is that important to you, you know, I'll follow your lead
Yeah.
this time. And then maybe next time, if there's something really important to me, you'll follow my lead, unless it's, you know, unless it's a real problem. And then to the children, you seem like the parents are in a united front.
Yeah.
What happens is something happens, the parent lashes out, the other parent says, "Why did you do that?" And the kids are confused, and the kids, you know, don't feel supported or understood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm glad that you went through, man, because you are needed because of that families that you're all those families that you're talking to, that you can be able to. You are a perfect vehicle by which you can
yeah,
invite
yeah,
that male into that
yeah.
conversation.
And I work with females just as
Yeah.
well, but
Yeah.
that male voice helps. And
Mhm.
I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I actually and have an office here. But I work with people in Atlanta or the surrounding areas. But I've got
Yeah.
clients around the country and around the world. I've got clients in Australia and in South America, and because at the end of the day, parenting is parenting,
Yeah.
and I have a framework that I try and work with, because I'm a parent coach. I'm not a therapist. A parent
Yeah.
coach is somebody who's more action oriented and plan oriented.
Hmm.
I like that because it gets results. A therapist tends to be more of a diagnoser and a
Yeah.
healer. I'm more of a coach. That's my business background. That's kind of, you know, also the area that I've chosen, and you know, being able to work in that way, you know, makes a big difference for men and women alike, for sure.
Yeah, you're still result oriented. It's everything is used, Andy. All of you guys that are listening to this conversation, and my children were a product of divorce, and I know the pain that is caused by that to the children. I saw it. I know the pain that it's caused to the parent. I saw it. I experienced it. I also know what it means to have the War of the Roses, if you will. I know when it comes to that piece as well, when one have to sit down, I've experienced it. But I have someone that was delved into the dark side of a lot more things than he was even privy to, and came out on top, came out with wisdom, came up with insight, came up with training. He has a program that is result oriented to help you and assist you and your family to move you through some dark places. He has been there. And one of the beauty I tell people about coaches, find one that has been through some stuff. If you have a coach that hasn't been through nothing, you need to find another, because that is not someone that knows anything. They have no experience. But I want to tell you guys that Andy has been through some stuff, and he is here, and he is standing. He is on the other side with some information that would be very helpful to you as an individual, because he's dealing with you as an individual. If you're listening, he had talked about he wants to find why you are acting the way you are. Why is this emotion coming out and you're reacting this way with your child? I have someone that is capable and able to help you, because the game here, the intention, not game, the intention is that he wants to serve your family, he wants to serve your business, all the needs that you have in both.
Yeah.
He is here to help you and to walk with you and
Yeah.
to change you to the next level. So I
Thank you,
want you
Ken.
guys, to
Yeah.
get in touch with him. I'm going to give you everything that he has so that you can reach him, because it is important. I understand and I know the most precious unit on this planet is the family. There is nothing more precious like it.
It's the
And
most important job, but there's no job description. There's no manual.
yeah, nothing.
There's no real training or all the
Yeah,
rest. And I do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and share. I know you'll put it in the notes, but the best way for, I try and walk the walk. If I
yeah,
can help people in any way, I'm more than willing to do that. Whether it's providing a resource or someone to talk to, whether it's just being an ear to listen to somebody, or whether it's if I'm a good fit to engage in the parent coaching itself, I'm happy to do that. And if they go to my website, which is www.parentsjourneycoaching.net, there's an opportunity to schedule some time on my calendar,
yeah.
and have a discovery call or a chat or whatever. No obligation, nothing. I'm here to serve, and so I welcome that opportunity.
Excellent. I know Andy had said earlier, COVID changed many things. It showed much weaknesses. It shows needs. It exposed many things. It is done a tremendous in service to our children as well. They're having difficulty adjusting, depression, all of these anxieties, all of these things that these young ones are having to deal with. I honestly know someone, guys. His name is Andy, and I'm going to provide everything. I want you guys to get in touch with him and help your family. He will guide you through. Again, Andy, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, and appreciate. Hope I was an inspiration and a help to your audience. And if your parents who are out there who are trying to make it through this world, you're not alone. And just if you focus on enabling your kids to empower them and to give them some control and understanding, you'll be far better off.
Excellent. And Andy, tell them I'm going to provide it, but tell them about your podcast, because
Oh,
I
yeah,
want
yeah, yeah.
them to
I
come
have a
to your
podcast.
podcast.
Again, this is about providing resources to folks. I have a podcast called Winning Parenting, and
Mm-hmm.
you can find it on Apple or Spotify or Google or most of the other apps. And it's just a way to get some information while you're running, while you're driving, while you're doing whatever, to help give you some inspiration, to help give you some approaches, to help give you some thoughts about ways to be a better human, to be a better parent, to be a better husband and wife, to be a better partner, so that you can have more confidence in what you do as a parent, and experience more joy. And it's a supplemental resource for folks. And I've got several episodes out there. There's more to come. One of them that I'm going to be talking about, I've given presentations before about social media and its impact on our kids.
Yeah.
And with this new meta thing coming out, it's just going to make it that, another layer of challenge. And so my next episode is going to be focused on that. And so I welcome people to tune in.
Excellent, guys. I want you to get in touch with him. Listen, because those are tools to assist you to build your relationship. That's what carpenter has. He has a bunch of tools, and electricians and all those guys. And so what you're doing is helping you take the tools, different tools for different jobs. And so all those tools that Andy is talking about is available at his podcast, so that you can take a couple of them and fix the relationships, because the tools that he provide is about fixing relationships. Again, thank you so much, Andy, for coming to Threads.
Thank you, Ken.
Pleasure, man.